Hi, Tyler Thurman here with Tyler Thurman Coaching. And before we go ahead and get started with today's video, I just want to point you in the direction of my website and blog, which is where you will find tons of videos just like this one, articles, links to transformative resources and other videos and articles, and book recommendations, all kinds of fun stuff. And you can find it at www.coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com, and go have some fun just playing around there. I think you'll enjoy it. Now, if you're interested in working with me personally, or as a couple, or group coaching, or speaking engagement, go ahead and give my office a shout out at 503-389-3778 here in the US, or shoot me an email at coachtylerthurman@gmail.com. All right, so the topic of today's transformative coaching video or coaching blog is the form versus the formless. And it is a distinction that I particularly love that takes place inside of the larger conversation of this thing I call the inside-out understanding, or the three principles. And I love this distinction because I think it really gets to the heart of sort of the transformative nature of these principles that I talk about in all of my coaching work, in all of the conversations that I have. And it is by its very nature transformative, because it's true. And that might sound like a bold statement, but hang in there, and you too will see something true. So the form versus the formless. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a distinction that points to two different aspects of life here on Earth that we almost inevitably mix together as one thing. So there is the world of form, which is to say the world outside of our heads, outside of our psychological existence. So the world of form is solid. It is made of particles. It's what we might call our circumstances. It makes up everything that we see with our eyes, essentially, and some things that we don't see with our eyes because they're so small. But it is the physical world, right? So that's the world of form. When people say something about their circumstances, they're usually talking about what the activities they do on a daily basis, the work that they do, the people that they interact with on a regular basis, where they live, their house, their cars, their what they eat, exercise, hobbies, toys, all of that. We can lump that all into the world of form. Okay? So that's the world of form. And one of the things that you can observe about the world of form is that it is transitory. So it is in constant flux. In other words, it's changing forms all the time. All the time. The form is always changing. There's sayings out there. The only thing you can count on is change. Well, that's true of the world of form. That is absolutely true. And worth knowing. So things like the body, the human body. It's part of the world of form. And one of the things about the world of form is change and transition. And, for instance, the body is designed to have a shelf life. It expires. That might seem to you kind of a crude way of talking about death and dying and transition, but the truth is the body has a shelf life, as does pretty much everything in the world of form. Our cars, our houses, our partners, our kids, our jobs, all of that will, if it's not there in 10 years, it almost certainly won't be there in 100, 200, 300 years. The form will have changed, and that's just the truth. So that's the first side of this distinction. Now the second side is the formless, and it's a little harder to talk about, but it is made up by these things. They're not things, actually, but these things I call the three principles, which were originally articulated by the theosopher Sydney Banks, and they're mind, consciousness, and thought. If you want to learn about those in a little bit more detail than this video, go check out my website. I got videos dedicated specifically to those, but it's the world of the formless is essentially the building blocks of the human experience. So there's the world outside our heads, and then there's our psycho-spiritual existence, as I talk about it oftentimes. And there's no form to it. There's no particles, as far as we can tell, that make up our experience of life, our psycho-spiritual, the human experience. And those building blocks that are formless are mind, consciousness, and thought. And mind is, just to give you a little taste of these principles, mind is basically the life force that animates our bodies, it animates animals, it grows acorns into oak trees. It's the living intelligence behind life. A lot of people, in a lot of traditions, would call that God or spirit. In psychology, they might call it the superego or your superconscious. But there's something giving life to us, and we call that mind. And it's formless. There's nothing tangible about that, right? There's nothing you can see with a microscope. And then there's consciousness, which is the second principle, which is essentially our awareness and our capacity to have an experience of life as human beings. So we're all walking around experiencing, having an experience. And it is almost the observer, right? So we're having an experience, but there's some aspect of ourselves, this consciousness, this awakeness, this awareness that is observing, that the experience is happening inside of. And that's consciousness. And then there is thought. So thought is essentially the content of our day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience of life. And it's it's creating our entire experience of life, those three principles. And they're formless. So one of the things that if you've seen any of my other work, heard it or read it, you will have heard me say, we feel our thinking. So one of the, it's what Sydney Banks called the missing link of thought. It's the missing link between the world of form and the world of the formless. Because we feel our thinking. There's this thought-feeling connection. And thought as a principle, before it comes into form, is formless. Right? It's a creative energy. And then we use it, and it comes into form. So as thought comes into form, or is brought into form by our consciousness, or our consciousness kind of brings our thinking to life. It's sort of the special effects department of our minds. So we have something like a fearful thought, and we get to feel that in our bodies and experience that as if it was real, as if it was something other than thought. And it works that way for all of our thinking. If it's a sad thought, we get to feel sadness as sort of a chemical in our body. That's how it takes form, through feeling, through experience. But thought, before that, thought is formless. And so that's why we call it the missing link. That's where the formless energy of life comes into form, and it begins to create everything that we see and hear and taste and touch and feel in the world of form. So why is this significant? Is sort of the most asked question when I share this distinction and the inside-out understanding in general. And it turns out that it's ridiculously significant, because this is true. What I'm pointing to as best I can with my words is a truth, or the truth, behind the human experience, the source of the human experience. That's the formless, right? I'm pointing to that as best I can with language, which is messy and paradoxical, and you can take issue with words. But there is something true behind the words. And it turns out that most people, most of the time, don't see the truth. Like I said, we get the worlds of the form and the formless all mashed together, and so we have an innocent misunderstanding about where our human experience is coming from and how it's being created, and that sort of simple misunderstanding, it turns out, is the source of pretty much all of our suffering and problems. So just that, right? Just that tiny little thing. Now the misunderstanding is we think the world of form is influencing and causing and creating our experience of life, that formless energy of life. And, for instance, we think things like the relationships that we're in, are the source of certain feelings that we feel, certain experiences that we have. We think our jobs or vocations, what we're up to on a day-to-day basis, has an influence on what we experience. Things like passion and frustration and stress. We think that our physical health has something to do with our mental well-being. And we think, things like self-esteem and self-image and confidence. We think that, having certain kinds of physical bodies causes those feelings and experiences. We think that our bank balances, they cause us happiness, or they cause us stress and upset and worry. All of that kind of thinking, it's a misunderstanding. That's not actually how it works. But here's the thing. If you think that's how the human experience gets created, sort of outside in. In other words, the world is sort of imposing itself on us. It's imposing feelings. There's innate feelings in certain circumstances. If somebody I love dies, that's just automatically a bad thing, and I need to feel bad about that. If somebody gets married, that's automatically supposed to be a good thing. I'm supposed to feel happy about that. There actually are no innate feelings or experiences or emotions that exist in the world of form. The world of form is, for lack of a better term, neutral. It's feeling neutral. It's emotion neutral. It's experience neutral. And when we think that it is the cause of our experience, the cause of our feelings, the cause of our emotions, we look to the world of form for the answer, for the change in experience and feeling and emotion. And we try to change it. And it's a losing game in a lot of ways, because it doesn't work, and we get to spend a lot of time and energy trying to change circumstances just so that we can have a better experience of life, a more wonderful experience, a more joyful, more peaceful, a more loving, a more connected experience of life. And we've just gotten it 180 degrees wrong and backwards, which is to say, that experience of life that I'm talking about, the human condition, is being generated, as I often talk about, from the inside out. Now, it's not really happening inside of anything. That's why I talk about it as the form and the formless. It's being created in the world of the formless. The spiritual realm is another way to look and talk about and think about that. And if you can begin to see that the greatest illusion on planet Earth, and maybe other planets if there's life on those planets, psychological life, is that we think the world of form influences the world of the formless, the world of the human experience. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. But because of the nature of the projection of the mind, and because of the nature of the human condition or the human experience being created by formless energy and formless principles that we can't see, we can't touch them, we can't feel them. So we project those feelings onto the world of form. And it's innocent. And wherever, whatever thinking we're feeling in the moment that we're projecting out onto the world, if you think of your eyes and your senses as a projector instead of a camera, you'll know that wherever you turn, you're going to see that. So I'm sure you've run into people that they kind of have a bleak outlook on life, generally speaking. That's because they're projecting it everywhere they turn. Other people have sort of a more positive outlook on life. They're projecting that everywhere they turn. One's not right, one's not wrong. That's just what's happening, and we don't know that that's what's happening. We don't know it. And so in the not knowing, we get ourselves kind of muddled up. We get ourselves off track. We get ourselves into some trouble, at least temporary trouble. And we do some things that we wish we wouldn't have done. We say some things that we wish we wouldn't say. Because we think that the world of form creates our experience of life, the world of the formless. In fact, the world of the formless is creating the world of form. And all you have to do is begin to glimpse that. Begin to glimpse the true nature of the human experience, the true building blocks of the human condition. And that we can only ever experience thought that's brought to life by consciousness, that's happening within this larger context of mind, spiritual mind. And whatever we think, we feel. And then our feelings are the start of the form. We feel it. We have an emotion. We have an experience of our thinking. And then what do? We act on those thoughts and feelings. We say things. We do things. And then out of those actions and words, things in the world of form get created. And it turns out that seeing through that illusion, that misunderstanding of the outside in, is transformative. So it generates a shift in our relationship to thought, to the human experience, to emotions, to feelings. Whereas most people walking around having their human experience get pretty caught up in their human experience. It feels real, it feels significant, it feels important, it feels justified, our actions. It feels bedrock, right? But it's just feeling and it's just thought. And those are formless. They've got nothing to do with what's going on outside you. Nobody or no thing can make you feel anything that you don't think. If you're not thinking it, you're not having an experience of it. We live a psychological or psycho-spiritual existence. We think that we can experience the world somehow directly via the five senses. The truth is, because we're projecting our experience onto the world of form, our thoughts inform our senses. They inform our senses, not the other way around. And because we're making a shift in understanding from a misunderstanding to the truth, that's why it's transformative. That's why people have a markedly more wonderful experience of life when they see this more deeply, when they have a sort of a deeper knowing about this, because they get to take that into account. They get to take the thought-feeling connection into account. They get to take the lack of connection of the outside world and their feeling into account. They get to take mind into account, which is to say, the source of our wisdom and our new creative thought and our peace of mind and our contentment and our love. We get to take that we're made of that. We come from that. Our experience of life is generated from those principles. We get to take that into account. We get to take into account that nothing that I do and say and create in the world of form will make me happy. None of that will make me miserable either. Nothing to do with that world of form. Nothing in that world of form has anything to do with my experience of life. Now that might sound strange, because we have been born into a world where that's what we've been taught from the moment we start breathing. Innocently, the big people around us when we're growing up, they want to teach us something valuable about happiness and well-being and love and connection. And because they've never really seen the truth of where it is, they give it a go. They give it their best guess. I think it might have something to do with being in a really good relationship. I think it might have something to do with doing something that you really love doing. I think it might have something to do with having a certain amount of money. I think it might have something to do with going to a certain school or playing a certain sport or getting certain grades or getting a certain level of power and achievement. We innocently teach our little ones this misunderstanding, and mostly well-meaning, but it's wrong. That's not how it works. There are no germs, emotion germs emanating from the world of form, attacking the world of the formless, emanating into the human experience. It just doesn't work that way. It works only one way, and it works from the formless to the form, not the other way around. And if you can understand that, think of how much time you're not going to spend trying to get it right in the world of form, trying to control and manipulate and impact and edit the world of form. Just right. Just get it right, so that you can be okay, so that you can feel okay, so that you can have that experience of joy and peace and love. You're not going to spend your time on that very often, particularly. If you understand this, you're going to look to the true source of the human experience. And you're gonna, when you get caught up in, feeling really unpleasant feelings, depressing feelings, sad feelings, fearful feelings, anxious feelings, you're not going to get particularly caught up in those, because it's just today's flavor or the moment's flavor or form that the formless energy of thought has taken. I first heard this, the analogy from Michael Neal, one of my mentors and just wonderful coach and teacher, of clay or thought. These formless principles, they're like clay. They create our experience. It's the raw material, right? There's nothing solid about it, but it's the raw material of our experience. And it gets created into form. So we make stuff out of clay, right? We make, dinosaurs, a turtle, a dog, a desk, a TV. We can make those things out of clay, and it will look like those objects. And on one level of understanding, those forms, we can get really caught up in those forms. We say, hey, that's a dinosaur. That's a turtle. That's a dog. That's a desk. That's a TV. And on a deeper level, a truer level of understanding, can begin to see it's all clay. This is clay. This is clay. This is clay. This is clay. And you just automatically won't get so caught up in the particular form that your thought is taking in the moment. So if you're feeling afraid, you won't look to the outside world to fix it. You won't even look to the inside world or the formless world to fix it, because you know that that's just this moment's batch of experience. It's this moment's form. It's the form that my thinking has taken. And another one, if I let it, will be along in a moment. So it's like a thought stream. And our experience, your experience will become less and less scary, less significant, less real, because your thinking is just thought. And it's got nothing to do with anything other than thought. It's not grounded in reality. It's not, my thinking is real and true, because it's made up. That's the nature of creativity, is it's creative, it's imaginary, it's bringing something into form, but it comes from nothing, right? It comes from no thing, and then gets made into things. And if you can see the truth of that, it will create a little bit of space between you, the big you, the mind you, the spiritual you, the essence of who you are, and your moment-to-moment experience of your thinking, feeling the emotional experience of your thinking. Because you are not, believe it or not, you are not your experience of life. You are the observer. You are what your experience is taking place within or inside of. But you aren't that. You aren't all the sad feelings that you've had over the years. You aren't all the happy feelings that you've had over the years. You aren't all the scary feelings that you've had over the years. You are the observer of all of that. And when you get a little bit of space between that, it won't particularly matter to you what's filling that space. If it's fear, yeah, I'm experiencing some fear. It's just another flavor of experience. And when you're not so caught up in the particular forms, either the physical form or the thought form, you get to go back to the formless. And you get to start fresh. You get to create from the formless. You get to be guided by this wisdom that's running through all of us, this bigger mind. Your mind will clear. Peace of mind will fill it. Peace of mind's what's there when all the thinking slows down. Love is what's there. Connection is what's there. When all that personal thinking, all those personal thought forms that we're so concerned about, slow down and settle down. And that just tends to happen more and more when you have a deeper understanding of the truth behind the human experience. And the truth that the world of form, it's got nothing to do with that. It is an effect of the formless. And so if you're interested in having a more wonderful, more beautiful, more peaceful, a more loving experience of life, the only magic wand I've ever found for that, the only thing I've found to transform people, is a deeper understanding about what's true about you, what's true about all of us. And it's these three bedrock principles: mind, consciousness, and thought. They are formless. They are rock steady in a sea of change. I'll share with you one more analogy before we part ways, which is, our entire experience of life, our thought processes, the world of form, we think it's solid, but it does, and it feels that way because oftentimes we recycle our personal thinking. And it's like a frozen river. And it looks solid, it feels solid, but it's made up of water particles, right? Water molecules. And the second that you begin to see the constants behind the human experience, mind, consciousness, and thought, you don't need to hold on to the specific forms that they take, the specific beliefs, the specific memories, the specific feelings. And the river begins to melt, and there begins to be a constant flow of creative new thought through you. And in the midst of the river, there are these three stones, these three beacons that are constant still. So the concepts and the ideas, the rights and wrongs, the shoulds and shouldn'ts, they begin to break down, and you begin to see, oh my God, those are abstract and meaningless. I made those up. I was clinging to them, hoping that would be something I can rest my laurels on. I can say that over there, that's true. But it begins to melt and it begins to flow, and you begin to think, oh God, that thing that I wanted over there, that's an arbitrary desire. That's made of thought. That thing that I'm afraid of over there, that's an arbitrary thought. It's not based in anything solid, anything real. And that would be really scary, to have all of these bedrock ideas and concepts and memories and things like that you've been building the foundation of your life on top of. If you had those begin to melt away, that would be really scary if there weren't these three spiritual facts, spiritual constants, formless constants, principles behind life. And so, in the midst of a flowing river, if you're going to stand on anything, stand on the truth behind the human experience, which is the formless nature of life, the spiritual essence behind life. And it will transform everything about your life. And it will become more and more and more wonderful. And you'll still experience depression and sadness and fear and upset and grief. But it won't particularly bother you that you experience those things, because that's not you. That's just the form that the formless has taken in the moment. And that's all there is to it. So I know this was a long video, but if you're interested in diving deeper into this, into deepening your understanding, into having a transformative experience, I'm in the wonderful life business. Reach out to me. At least check out my website and other videos like this, www.coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com. Or if you want to work with me more intimately, more personally, reach out to my office, coachtylerthurman@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to set up a consultation and have a chat. And we'll see where it takes us. And thanks for listening. And until next time, with all the love in the world, take care.